South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has acknowledged that there were shortcomings in the communication around the central bank statement on the investigation into the theft that occurred at President Cyril Ramaphosa's Phala Phala farm. Kganyago was speaking in a wide-ranging interview with SABC News anchor Dr. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, addressing the effectiveness of the communication surrounding the Phala Phala report. Here's what Governor Kganyago had to say.
We actually never issue a statement on an investigation, but there was so much interest in this particular one, and Parliament had asked us to come back to it, and we felt that we must release the statement. It's not quite how we communicate. There was a lot of legalese in there, and that's because the lawyers said it must be this way because it's when something like whatever you say is going to be used against you. What has now eventually happened, because we have been taken to court, it would enable us to table the full report, including the steps that had been taken in the investigation and the documentation that we used in the investigation. And we think that this ventilation in court will actually put the matter to rest.
That's actually quite interesting to hear, Governor. You say that, and I guess, are you saying in hindsight that you thought that you would have done the communication slightly differently? I
would have preferred to do the communication better, because the way in which even as in this interview, I don't like using big terms, but lawyers love their terms, and they wanted the statement in a particular wording.
Well, I think we've all learned the term perfected transaction now, that's for sure.
I didn't know about it until we had to deal with this investigation.
I suppose one other question around that is why the investigation took so long. It took a year. When I looked into the statement, it said you looked at dozens of documents and hundreds of pages, and I appreciate dozens of documents is a lot, but hundreds of pages, a year, that seems like quite a long time to look at just dozens of documents over.
There were also interviews that had to be taken, and including having to deal with somebody who is in Dubai and not in South Africa.
So you did interview and speak to Mr. Hazim?
No, we actually ended up not interviewing him. But the point here was that there were lots of interviews that had to be done. And you do the interview and you do a subsequent interview and so forth. And you know, there's a lot here. We had to take legal advice at every step of the way. And that takes time. The Hawks are still busy with their investigation, and they started before us.
Sure, and I think, to be fair, you've been quite clear on what your mandate is, and you haven't wanted to creep outside that mandate, and maybe that's something to be welcomed. I suppose there is a deeper question, even outside of Phala Phala, about the extent to which someone can transact in a foreign currency. And the question I really want to ask you, which I haven't heard you being asked, is, given your mandate to defend the rand, and that doesn't just mean defending the currency and its exchange value, it actually means the integrity of the currency as well. Do we want to end up in a situation where people transact in our country using foreign currencies in cash? Don't you think that impinges on the wider mandate of defending the rand as the medium of exchange, even in sometimes export situations?
We're protecting the currency rather than saying defending, because when you say defending, it just assumes that the currency is under attack. But the protection, yes. So, but it's a very important question. What the regulations state, and this was a proclamation of 1961, is that when a South African exports, they must invoice in a currency other than the rand. So that is everything. So this transaction had to take place with a foreigner for the export of these things. It had to be denominated in foreign currency. The cash thing, in this era, many people prefer to transact using EF because of the risks associated with carrying cash. It's not where one would get and say that why didn't you do an EFT? There are risks carrying cash, not just rent. Dollars carrying cash is a risk.
So this is regulation 8.1, I believe, of the exchange controls regulations. And isn't there a difference between invoicing in a foreign currency and actually accepting the cash in that foreign currency? So one could invoice in dollars, but that clearance wouldn't necessarily have to be in dollars into your account.
But once you have invoiced in dollars, you are saying pay me in dollars. The thing that happens here is that, let's say that this transaction was taking place and it goes through a bank, okay? The dollars will be coming from offshore into your bank, and your bank will say to you, you have received dollars. Can you show us the documentation? Where are these dollars? These dollars are from this person. Can you tell us what was the purpose of these dollars? And that is how you would deal with it. It's clean. And you saying that, and then at that point, your bank will then say that you have got so many days to convert these dollars into rand, or failing which you can put them in what is called the customer foreign currency account, which you can have in your bank if you are an exporter.